Oh no! Old Sabrock's running out of content! Running out of things to talk about! What to do? We'll start a new series. I'm doing a series of videos now on the topic of how I would redesign the classes of D&D. Pretty straightforward. Good places to sow my opinions, which is the point. And there's 12 of them, so, well, kind of. You know what? No, I'm gonna do Artificer too. In fact, fun fact, about according to my timer there, 40 seconds ago, I was going to have this video be about the Barbarian, but I'm going to do them in alphabetical order. So we're starting with the Artificer. Artificer. So here's the thing about Artificer. I have a particular history with having opinions on this class. I started playing in 3rd edition. There was a Eberron supplement for 3rd edition that came out with the Artificer class. I did not like it. I didn't like it at all. I thought that technology, like more advanced technology of the Eberron setting, was not really suitable for D&D. It clashed with the fantasy as I saw and desired it. And so, and I didn't really care for the magic item crafting systems in general anyways. Like, I've always been of a mind that, player characters should be out there adventuring. You'll have downtime between adventures that you can mostly gloss over, get some shopping done, whatever. But for the most part, like, the focus of the game really should be on adventuring. And the Artificer wants to kind of like sit down and build magic items. Now, the specific mechanics of the Artificer have changed dramatically, both from 3rd to 4th and from 4th to 5th. It still has some of the same general themes of constructing items, but the way that those are manifested are just remarkably different, practically unrecognizable. Specifically, I want to talk about the 5th edition Artificer as I see it. Now, there's a couple of problems here. It is a primary spellcaster, which means that it doesn't really get weapon proficiencies. It doesn't get extra attack. It's not meant to be using weapons. It's meant to be casting spells pretty much continuously. Like, its default interaction with a situation is use magic to solve the problem. The issue with that, if you know anything about the 5th edition Artificer, is that it's a half caster, which means you don't get very many spell slots. So it's actually the worst primary caster in the game. It is a half caster, like the Ranger or the Paladin, but Ranger or Paladin have armor proficiencies. Well, I guess the Artificer has armor proficiencies too, but they have weapon proficiencies and extra attack and abilities to help them use that. So their damage output is fairly high. An Artificer does not have high damage output by default. There are ways to enhance this, of course. You could go Artillerist, get your little cannon that follows you around and shoots. That is actually pretty decent for a damage boost. As a bonus action, shooting that cannon off, I'm actually quite for it. I think that is that's some excellent economy there. But I don't really want to like evaluate or review the Artificer. I want to talk about maybe the issues that I have with its core design and how I would redesign it. And the very short answer is that I would take a page out of Blades in the Dark. I would take the leech, the mechanics behind the way that equipment works in Blades in the Dark, and specifically the leech's bandolier, and import that as close to 1-for-1 as possible over to the Artificer. I think that, I will explain this for those of you who have not played Blades in the Dark. So I think that the Artificer should have a bandolier of consumables, which refresh at a regular rate, probably once a day. When you finish a long rest, you refill your bandolier, and a bandolier has 3 charges. You expend a charge to have a consumable, be it a drug, a potion, a bomb, whatever it is, some kind of consumable item that you have crafted, alchemical, scientific, maybe it's a magical potion, whatever it is. But you don't have to determine that when you craft it. When you fill up your bandolier, you don't have to decide what it is full of. You decide that when you need to use one. I think that is a really cool mechanic that doesn't come up very much in D&D. D&D does not do that very much, where it's sort of the abstractness of you have equipment. What equipment? You have equipment. Yes, there is equipment. I am equipped with equipment. And then only when you need it do you decide what that actually is. That's pretty common in narrative-focused games. Blades in the Dark, Forged in the Dark, Powered by the Apocalypse, those kinds, that sort of bent. There's very much an emphasis on don't settle the details until you need to. Because that keeps the narrative open for whatever is most pleasing to the players. That doesn't come up in D&D very often. A lot of D&D is very much about, like, you have to prepare ahead of time. You have to make your decisions before you have all the information. Make your decisions before you know what would be most narratively appropriate. Which is sort of a lean towards realism, but I think it sometimes, not always, but it sometimes interferes with the fun of crafting a story. Because when you are, say, writing a book, or you are writing a TV show, or whatever it is that you are a story that you are going to refine and complete before anyone sees it, there's a lot of times when you have this sort of narrative convenience where, like, oh, the characters don't necessarily know ahead of time what they're going to need, but you as an author do. You know what's going to happen, and so you make it convenient that they have what they need when they need it. That doesn't happen in D&D very often. I think it's fine. I think it's fine for RPGs in general. I think I kind of wish that there were more mechanics like that. So I would do that. I would import the bandolier. So you get 3 charges to start with, and then, like, at some higher level, you get a second bandolier each day. Maybe that scales continuously. I don't know. By the way, for this series, I am not Pointy Hat. I am not going to be writing up these homebrews and providing you with these write-ups of these class redesigns. I have done a couple of redesigns. They are a lot of work. I'm not doing that work for this series. I'm sorry. I'm just talking about the way that I would redesign these classes if I were going to. I'm not necessarily going to. If I were Artificer, I would start with the bandoliers. Bombs, grenades, and then, like, occasionally potions, like, a healing potion. Like, imagine if, about that level. So, like, either a grenade, which could work like, I would actually make it more powerful than Alchemist Fire, like a souped up Alchemist Fire, or a healing potion. You get 3 healing potions per day. Isn't that kind of cool? All of this in addition to, here's the other thing. Like, I was about to say, in addition to spell slots, I actually would remove spell slots. I think the Artificer should not be a traditional caster, should not be casting spells the way that other casters cast spells. You have a lot of magic, but it manifests very differently. And I think spell slots are an extremely poor way to represent that mechanically. I think all of your magic and your abilities should be tied up in the items that you create, because your whole class's identity is creating items, whether it be magic items or clockwork gizmos or whatever it is. That is what you do. In certain settings, I understand that comes hand in hand with being able to cast spells. In the Forgotten Realms, you only make magic items by being a spellcaster. You have to be a spellcaster to be able to make magic items. That is, I think, an unusual way to approach the crafting of magic items. In my setting, for example, an item is created magical if the person creating it has sufficient skill and sufficient will for that item. You crafting a weapon, and you are an extremely proficient weaponsmith, and you have a very specific goal in mind for this weapon, a purpose for it. You bestow the weapon with that purpose, and it gains magical properties. That's just the way, that's the sort of ambient way that magic is imbued into items, is with skill of craft and intent. And there's a lot of settings, I think, that where magic items work similarly, where you don't have to be a spellcaster to implant magic into an item. And some items gain magic over time just by being used, by having a history. That's the way it works in Rokugan of Legend of the Five Rings, is that a samurai's regalia, their daisho and their bow, traditional samurai weapons gain magical properties just by being ancestral, by staying around long enough and experiencing enough things. They sort of awaken. The spirits within these items awaken and become more powerful. So there's a lot of different settings where magic items are not created by spellcasters. And I think tying the creation of magic items to spellcasters in the very core mechanics of the game is a mistake. That should be something left to specific setting books. So anyways, I digress. I think that artificers should be item crafters, but not spellcasters. So creating a little construct cannon to follow you around, that's cool. I would keep that, to be honest. I would not tie it to spells. I believe the way the Artificer works right now with the Artillerist, you get it once per day for free, and then you have to spend spell slots to get it thereafter. Obviously, spending spell slots would not exist if you don't have spell slots, but I would make it so that you can repair the cannon during downtime. And I kind of think that every artificer type would have a different kind of construct that they can build and have them follow you around. I think infusions are fine. I think infusions mostly go unchanged, honestly. I think the infusion system is fine on its own. It's kind of the whole draw of the Artificer class, which is a little disappointing considering that it's not that powerful. It's fine. It's fine, but it doesn't really make up for the fact that the Artificer is a spellcaster. Or is a half-caster, I should say. It doesn't make up for the loss of being a full caster. So, more constructs is, I think, the thing that I would go for. You have your Bandolier, and maybe certain subclasses will add new options to your Bandolier, like the Artillerist will get even better bombs. The Armorer would get deployable like shields. You throw it down and it creates a little force field, a little like 5-foot section wall of force. Wouldn't that be cool? That'd be neat. So that you could do things like that. Your Bandolier expands with your subclass. And then each subclass also will get some sort of construct that they can create and either wear or is able to follow them around. It's either ambulatory or worn. And that's what I would really focus on. I think probably at level 1, you would get... so getting rid of cantrips, you would get something in its place, your default attack option, because every class needs to have a default attack option. I think what I would want to do is have like guns, basically, because the Artificer classically makes guns and uses guns. I don't know I think in 5th edition they're actually not proficient in guns, but they can make them. They can make anything, right? They make stuff. So they're going to make guns. And if they make them, I think you can use them. So I would have the Artificer specifically be able to be proficient in guns. And so you'd have a selection of different types of guns. And these guns could be as simple as like black powder shot, your a little musket pistol thing. Or it could be like a wand loaded into a discharger that increases its accuracy. So there would be a selection of, I would say, cantrip adjacent abilities that are selected by building a weapon that deploys that ability, which means that they would not be able to be switched out, or they would be able to be switched out, actually, because I like interchangeability. I think so. I don't know if I would necessarily go with like you could switch them out on a long rest, or it's every time you level up you can switch one out. But you'd have like 2 or 3 of them, and you build them into objects, which means that you can give them to someone else. Now, I would say that in somebody else's hands, they should be worse. They should be better in your hands because they're your creations. You know how to use them. So probably have limited ammo, like say 3 shots by default. Or I guess it maybe even depends on the specific item. Like some of these guns have 1 shot, some have 3, some have 6, straight up gunslinger. So that's what I would do. Introduce a Bandolier mechanic. Remove spell slots. Infusions, probably the system stays the same. I would probably expand on and improve the way that they like the number of infusions that you get and the types of infusions you get. I think buff the system, but do not fundamentally change it. I think it works fine as is. It just needs more. More constructs that you create and or wear. That basically you're kind of a pet class, right? So you'll have some sort of construct following you around that gets its own actions, that can like help you out or provide support to your allies. I kind of like the idea that the Artificer is a support class first and foremost. So you're mainly going to be looking at how to buff your party. And so constructs are a great way to do that. And then, replace cantrips with a series of like handheld weapons that can be ranged weapons, like, let's call it what it is. It's guns that you can get various effects from. And so that's how I would redesign the Artificer. Next time I will do the Barbarian and then the Bard, and we'll move on from there. And maybe, just maybe, I'll have a few ideas for classes after that. But this is the new series that I'm working on, how I would redesign the Artificer.